Musk and Trump's Doja cuts are being blamed for the more than 100 deaths from the July 4th flash floods that hit Texas, where the river wall rose to nearly 30 feet as the Hill Country and Concho Valley received several months of rain in just hours. The death toll right now stands at more than 111, with at least 161 reported missing. Texas Governor Greg Abbott telling reporters the number of dead will likely double as rescue teams discover more bodies. Abbott now telling reporters that Texas emergency teams knew 2 days in advance that flash floods were on their way and they were prepared. He said, quote, "But no one would know that would be a 30-foot high tsunami wall of water," unquote. Asked by a reporter who's to blame for the state not alerting the victims soon enough, Abbott responded, quote, "You asked, and I'm going to use your words. Who's to blame? Know this. That's the word choice of losers. Asking who's to blame is the word choice of losers, according to Greg Abbott. Really, because Texas wouldn't spring for flash flood alert warning systems, saying they're too expensive. But asking who's to blame is the word choice of losers. 25 Texas death row inmates given lethal injections in the past 4 years. Suddenly, Greg Abbott doesn't believe in the word blame. It's for losers. So who is to blame? That is what accountability is all about. Was it the Doja cuts that left so many Texans unprepared? Texas Emergency Management Chief W. Nim Kidd seems to think the federal government is to blame. Immediately after the flash floods hit, he told reporters that the National Weather Service underestimated how much water would be in the storms. Kerrville, Texas City Manager Dalton Rice concurred, saying the National Weather Service never warned them there would be so much rain. The highest-ranking elected official in Kerr County, Judge Rob Kelly, telling CBS News, quote, "We had no reason to believe that this was going to be anything like what's happened here. None whatsoever." Well, the U.S. Weather Service is part of the Department of Commerce, not Homeland Security, whose director, Kristi Noem, told Fox and Friends that the National Weather Service put out all the necessary alerts. Who's to blame? The Doja cuts to the National Weather Service? The BBC reporting that while there have been cuts this year to the National Weather Service, they didn't hamper the Bureau's efficiency in predicting the storm. According to the reporting I've seen, the National Weather Service, despite the cuts, issued flash flood warnings in enough time to prepare Texas's emergency management to respond. What Abbott was completely unprepared for, no matter how high the water, was to alert people to take to higher ground. From what I'm hearing, had Texas been able to alert the victims before the river broke, a lot more people would be alive. So, someone's to blame. I don't mean to sound like a loser, but someone is to blame. That's what accountability is. Kerr County took the brunt of the flooding, with rescuers saying pretty much nobody has been found alive there since July 4th. In the hours after the floods, the New York Times reported that Rob Kelly, Kerr County's top elected official, admitted that they were unprepared for the flash floods because Texas didn't want to pay for any early warning flash flood system that would alert residents to take higher grounds. The Times reporting Kelly saying, quote, "Taxpayers won't pay for it." Kelly, according to the Times and the BBC, told reporters that after deadly flash floods hit Wimberley, Texas 10 years ago, there was a conversation about implementing a county-run warning system for flash floods, but he said they decided it was too expensive. KXAN Austin reporting Kerr County Judge Rob Kelly put it very simply, quote, "We do not have a warning system in this county," unquote. That seems to be who and what's partially to blame. Independent meteorologist Chris Vygotsky telling NBC News, quote, "The forecasting was good. The warnings were good. It's always about getting people to receive the message." CBS News reporting Nim Kidd of the Texas Division of Emergency Management added that parts of Texas lack adequate cell phone coverage in order to receive those phone alerts. The New York Times reporting that cell phones were considered unacceptable electronic devices at Camp Mystic, where dozens were washed away. Camp Mystic believed nature afforded an opportunity to disconnect from technology, and campers were encouraged to write letters instead of emails to their families. So who's to blame? Certainly not the victims or their families. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer announced he's writing a letter to the Inspector General of the Commerce Department to look into whether the DOJA cuts played any role in all those lives being lost in Texas over the weekend. He's trying to find out. He's perpetuating the lie that the National Weather Service is to blame because of the DOJA cuts. It's not true. And you know what Schumer didn't bring up? Man-made climate change. Ultimately, this is the fault of the oil companies. Why didn't he bring up man-made climate change? You think maybe the millions in contributions from the fossil fuel industry to Chuck Schumer's campaign war chest might have something to do with that? I'll get back to the role climate change played in all this. But it's starting to look like Trump's cuts to the National Weather Service, despite what Chuck Schumer and others are saying, not the culprit. Yes, Trump and Musk laid off 600 of the National Weather Service's 4,000 employees. Yes, there are fewer meteorologists right now. And according to the BBC, 20% fewer weather balloons are getting launched. The New York Times did report the local National Weather Service office in Central Texas was short-staffed at the time of the flooding. One San Antonio meteorologist who specialized in early warning coordination for the National Weather Service took a DOJA-related early retirement package back in April. Tom Fahey of the National Weather Service Employees Organization told the New York Times that the vacancy rate inside the National Weather Service since Trump returned to office has doubled. But Fahey told NBC News that in the lead up to those flash floods, the weather forecasting offices were properly staffed and had all the resources needed to issue what turned out to be accurate forecasts and timely warnings leading up to the flash floods. In other words, the federal government, even while it's under assault by Trump and Musk, did its job. Federal employees take their jobs not just seriously, they see their work as a sacred trust, and they will log long hours if there are budget cuts because lives are on the line. That didn't stop the United States Supreme Court from ruling on Tuesday that Trump can proceed, at least temporarily, in dismantling the federal workforce by laying off tens of thousands of employees inside the State Department, Housing and Urban Development, and over Treasury. The federal government is not to blame. Maybe I'm wrong, but leave a comment, but from what I'm reading and from what people are telling me, the fault lies with Texas officials unwilling to pay for the flash flood warning systems. The science was there, but Texas wouldn't spend the money to get the word out. Independent meteorologist Chris Vygotsky said, quote, "The forecasting was good. The warnings were good. It's always about getting people to receive the message. It appears that is one of the biggest contributors to this catastrophe. That last mile. Texas wouldn't spring for the last mile. Emergency alerts, flood warning alerts. Texas, the state that still refuses Medicaid expansion under Obamacare. This is the state that says the federal government can't do anything right. But on July 4th, it was the federal government that did its job. Texas did not. Keep that in mind, because Trump and Republicans say this is going to be FEMA's last year as they plan to zero out the budget for FEMA, claiming states can do a better job responding to natural disasters than Washington can. Do you believe that? Texas doesn't. They asked for an emergency declaration so FEMA could come in. FEMA works. The Washington Post late last night came out with an analysis of FEMA maps that advised 13 camps along the Guadalupe River and its Kerr County tributaries, which were completely flooded over the weekend. These maps said these areas were located inside high-risk flood zones. FEMA said these are not the place where you want to be during a downpour. Even Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz defended the National Weather Service, saying that in anticipation of Friday's rain, there had been extra staff working the agency. Now, of course, Ted Cruz said this not to defend the federal government, but to defend the DOJA cuts. Cruz was on holiday vacation in Greece when the floods struck. According to the Daily Beast, Cruz and his family were touring the Parthenon on July 4th when the flash flooding began. And according to the Daily Beast, Cruz grunted. His wife gave an American tourist a dirty look when that tourist shouted, 20 kids dead in Texas and you take a vacation. Sadly, it turned out to be way more than 20. You might remember 4 years ago during the winter storm Uri, which killed hundreds in Texas. So winter storm. Cruz hightailed it to Cancun because he said, I wanted to be a good dad. Cruz returned from his holiday on Monday. According to the BBC, he told reporters, this is not a time for partisan finger-pointing. He's right. It is not a time for partisan finger-pointing. It is the time for existential finger-pointing. Ted Cruz in the past decade has lied repeatedly about global warming, saying, quote, according to the satellite data, there's been no significant global warming for the past 18 years. It's just a lie, an effing lie. Cruz also said, quote, many of the alarmists on global warming, they've got a problem because the science doesn't back them up, unquote. 99.999% of the scientists say we're at the tipping point. The 0.01% are paid charlatans. Ted Cruz said climate change is the perfect pseudo-scientific theory for a big government politician who wants more power. And then he added, because it's a theory that can never be disproven. Because it's a theory that can never be disproven. Well, you got that right. It's a theory that can't be disproven. The BBC's climate correspondent, Justin Rowlott, writes the link between climate change and those flash floods in Texas is inseparable. He writes, the warmer the temperature, the more moisture in the clouds. And when those clouds break, the heavier the rainfall. He writes that for the past 200 years, scientists have known that when you raise the temperature by 1 degree, you increase a cloud's capacity to hold moisture by 7%. In other words, a county in, say, Massachusetts or New Jersey that usually hits 90 degrees this time of year, but instead starts hitting 100%, is going to see much heavier, slower moving clouds carrying tons of moisture that unleash incredibly wetter, life-threatening flash floods. That's how it works. So yeah, I understand the temptation to blame the DOJA budget cuts for the tragedy in Texas. And while firing people from the National Weather Service is an incredibly stupid idea, our federal government still rises to the occasion. It always does. It was Texas Republicans who once again let their people down by not paying for the early flash flood warning alert systems. And it was Exxon, the oil company that spends billions paying politicians and crackpot scientists to deny man-made climate change. They're to blame. Texas denies the science behind climate change because Texas has no choice. The planet's most prodigious serial killer, Exxon, is headquartered in Texas. Meanwhile, the weather in Texas gets more unpredictable. Frozen pipes in the winter, heat waves, droughts, tornadoes, hurricanes, and flash floods, while they continue to mock the grave truth that Exxon is killing us. Texas continues to ignore science, which is why the year is only half over. And 2025 already has the highest number of measles cases in 33 years. That's thanks to Texas. Thanks to Texas, measles, a disease that the United States officially wiped out in 2000, is now back with 1,277 confirmed cases and, according to the Washington Post, 155 hospitalized and 3 people dying from it. 2 of the 3 who died were perfectly healthy, unvaccinated children living in Texas. Between 2001 and 2024, a total of 3 people died from measles in this country. Now, so far, 3 in 1 year. Where did this measles outbreak start? West Texas, where, according to the Washington Post, 750 cases have been reported since late January, but that number is believed to be much higher since many of the cases in West Texas go unreported. The Centers for Disease Control says 92% of all the measles cases this year in the United States were contracted by people who were unvaccinated. The other 8%, they don't know if they were vaccinated or not.